Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sci-Fi and Friends podcast, episode number 30. Very special episode today. But first, some quick business. Still working on the website for Infinite Productions and Curious Fox. All those are in the works. Mr. Caleb Clark is now, he doesn't have a job anymore, but now he is focused on helping build the website and building the reels. So those should be published and live very soon. Besides that, if you haven't been watching the crypto world, I would say great time to hop in. Bitcoin is way, way up. I don't know. We haven't even really talked about cryptocurrencies on this podcast, but if you follow the Instagram or anything, we're really into it. So check it out. Maybe we'll talk about it today. I don't know.
Yeah.
Today, my guest, I got a very special guest. Really pleased to have him here. It's an honor. He is a Pitt State professor at the moment, teaching media theory, interpersonal communications, and gender studies. His biography was all over the place. He's done so much in the past. He's worked as an actor. We were talking earlier. He lived in California, SoCal, where I lived for a while. He's involved with philosophy, pop culture, American literature, all sorts of things. He's a master of many trades, many things. Please welcome Dr. Joey Pogue.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on today.
I appreciate you having me, especially with this excellent coffee that you brewed yourself.
Yeah,
Cooked yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, roasted it myself. Yeah. I had good training. There was a great gentleman named Matthew Wickland who used to work for Downstream, and Downstream, that's where I work, has their own like industrial coffee roaster. And when he was figuring that out, I kind of hung out with him on the weekdays, and he taught me everything he knows. So.
He did a good job.
Yeah. Thank you, Matthew.
I'm a coffee connoisseur, so you did well.
Excellent. Good. Yeah, it should be. It should keep us pretty chatty.
Yeah.
that's the key.
Yeah.
It's a tad bit hot. So I'm just. Did I say your name right?
Yes.
Pogue?
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
I've been trying to. I want to Pogue, Dr. Joey Pogue. First, Caleb Clark is the one that recommended me to you. Said that he took interpersonal communication, that you're a fascinating guy. He had some good stories about the 70s. I'm kind of in that psychedelic world where I keep up with the literature, the research, always involved with, are you familiar with MAPS? Multi-Association Disciplinary of Psychedelic Studies.
No, sounds interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. MAPS is basically the forefront of psychedelic studies. They're in their third trimester. I don't know what the third round of MDMA for post-traumatic stress disorder, things of that sort, which, if I'm not saying it correctly, but the third trimester is the last step before you get into legality and you start being able to use it in a medical sort of setting. So that's fascinating.
Yeah.
But they also do, cannabis. They do a little bit of ayahuasca treatment. They have their finger in just about every sort of substance, but their big one right now is that MDMA. They put a lot of time and effort and research into that. So it's called MAPS. It's a great organization. In fact, I can bring it up real quick just to show you, because you would definitely be interested in it.
There's so many things we have access today that it's hard to get used to all the good stuff.
Yeah. Dr. Rick Doblin is the kind of the head of this who... there you go. They just had this psychedelic science, and they posted all their lectures online. So they have a whole bunch of stuff going for them right now. There it is, the MDMA assisted psychotherapy.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a little bit of LSD assisted psychotherapy. I don't think it's as far along as the MDMA. Like that one's just on the cusp of being used throughout the world. Yeah, ayahuasca. There you go. Everything I just said.
Yeah.
So great organization. I think they're located in San Francisco area maybe, but they're really the forefront of what's going on in that world. So, yeah.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah. If you ever get a chance to check out some of their research, it's fascinating. They're really doing a good job of shedding a lot of that preconceived idea of what those sorts of substances are and what they do and what they can be used for. So, yeah, pretty interesting. But first off, I say it was we could talk about you and kind of your backstory, how you got started in gender studies or being a professor in general. I don't know. It looked like you wanted to be an actor for a while. You're out in California.
My first, I was born in '50 and I grew up in the '60s. And my first real love was to be a singer-songwriter, and I loved Dylan and Neil Young. And, that whole era kind of got lost in that, and dropped out of college to try to pursue it for a while, and ended up traveling all over the place and doing a number of jobs: construction, cooking. Drove a bus, did a lot of things before I decided to go back to school as a non-traditional student. So from about 68, graduation from high school, to 75, I was kind of pursuing the dream of being an artist in the form of a singer-songwriter. Later, the acting came in, and then I became a director as well. At one point, I was an art major in college, so I've done some painting and that kind of thing too. So I don't know whether you would call me lost during that time or just trying to turn into a Renaissance person or whatever.
Right.
I ended up in 1975, after a variety of things, I ended up in Montana, where I was going to go to school at the University of Montana and support myself by working for U.S. Plywood. And I had a football injury and flunked their physical. So I ended up coming back to Missouri and going to a community college near my hometown and becoming an English teacher. And I thought it was a practical thing to do because I loved writing and I loved poetry and songs. And I thought, well, this makes sense. And I had a lot of stories to tell, so I became a teacher. I taught high school, junior high and high school English and forensics and speech and drama, and decided one day to go back and get my master's, and I worked on it part-time. And really my education is a long window of development, both on campus and off, because I never did really know for sure what I wanted to do. So I just indulged in whatever I wanted at the time. And what it turned out was, once I got my PhD, I had a wealth of experience and had taken several different courses. And so I'm a generalist in our department. I teach the interpersonal and the media analysis, the media ethics, gender, family, that kind of thing. But I'm well-versed in theory, and so I teach background courses. And then I direct theater every once in a while.
That's cool. Yeah.
If you were to ask me what my specialty is, I really don't know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, except that I love knowledge. I love learning. Experiential knowledge is important to me. I think that if you don't have the experiential knowledge alongside what I would call the book or the academic, the formal knowledge, then I wouldn't say that you're worthless, but I'm saying if you've got the two, then it's a strong combination.
I mean, I have 3.5 pages of notes on you, and that was from the Pitt State outline of who you were. So yeah, you definitely were a generalist, and I think I related with that in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people do nowadays, especially with the internet. You could be interested in one thing one night and a master in a while if you dedicated enough time.
I agree with you 100% that the internet is an incredible tool. There's a lot of junk on there, but there's a lot of excellent stuff on there.
Sure.
And I probably watch the internet more than I do television. In fact, I don't even watch local network television. I can't handle it.
No, just the amount of commercial breaks,
the advertisements,
and the repetitiveness.
It seems like everything's for sale, and I can't stand that. Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Not to degrade the people that go into that field, because it works.
Sure.
The proof is that it works.
Right.
It doesn't work on me very well. But,
But
the internet is just a wonderful place to go. And it's once you get a taste of that kind of knowledge, and it's difficult to go back to network TV. And,
absolutely.
So I've got I'm not very advanced technologically speaking, but I do have a Roku, and
there you go.
I've got several things that I investigate, and I find myself. I was just telling myself recently, I thought, you don't watch much entertainment anymore. You're always watching philosophy or podcasts or lectures or whatever. And so it's really difficult for me to go back to some of that other stuff, which makes a comment, I think, on a lot of things, which we could take all day talking about that.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% with you right there. I do watch a little TV, but it's not network. It'll be like HBO, be a Game of Thrones, some sort of narrative, Mr. Robot, Westworld, things like that. Yeah. But as far as my daily consumption of technology or media or information, it's almost 100% the internet. YouTube and Vimeo, blogs, podcasts. I literally have a podcast going all the time. If I'm gardening, if I'm doing dishes, if I'm getting ready to go out, I have a podcast. I try not to listen to podcasts on the days I have one,
right?
Because they influence me on topics and whatnot. But I mean, besides that, I literally will have a podcast going all the time, and most of the time it's really informative. They're talking about something like the other day I'm listening to Sam Harris, and he had Dr. Robert Sapolsky on. And so they're having this conversation about biology and good and evil and stuff. So it's almost like being in a college lecture room with two professors talking to one another.
Very much, yeah.
And it's totally free, and it's in my pocket. I can pause, stop, rewind at any moment. And they both have multiple books I could look into. So, I mean, we're just at the very tip of it, but there's just a massive undergrowth of information that you could keep looking into,
And it's all really connected. If students have a complaint in my class, it's like, well, why is he talking about that? And I said, well, because it is connected. They don't see it at first, but
right.
So I think they call it the algorithm or whatever, where they see what you've watched and then they send you stuff. And I try to confuse the algorithm because I'll be looking at a YouTube presentation on Nietzsche and the herd, and then I'll go from that to fishing for smallmouth. I mean, just and so I'm probably confused the system. Maybe not. I don't know, but I don't feel real bad about it. I don't think the world's going to hell or anything because of the media. I think it gives us a wide variety of diet, of brain food. And it's like, if we just had network TV, it'd be like a junk food buffet.
Right, yeah,
There's nothing else, there's nothing to think about.
Right.
Now, every once in a while, there'll be a show that I'll get on Netflix or Amazon that I really like. And then when I really like it, then I'll binge.
Yeah. What was your last one that you binged on?
The Killing.
Okay. Was that Amazon?
No, that was Netflix.
Okay.
But it was really good. It was really dark.
Okay.
But it showed two detectives trying to solve these crimes, and they both had personal problems of their own, and it didn't hesitate to show the heroes had problems. They were human. They had drug problems, they had alcohol problems, family problems, all that kind of stuff, and they formed a relationship in the end, and it was dark, but it was good.
Have you ever seen True Detective?
I think I've seen it advertised. I may have to try it.
Oh, you just described True Detective to me, and it's HBO and it has Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson.
Well, those are two good ones.
Oh my gosh, some of the greatest writing and character development. I mean, I'm not a cop show kind of guy. I don't care for them. I couldn't stop True Detective. I think it's 8 episodes, so it's not too hard to take care of. But it will absolutely change your life. It's an amazing show.
Well, that's kind of like the Killing, and I belong to a book club of PSU professors. Some of them retired, some of them not, and we meet once a week to talk about a book. We've gone through several books, and we all get to recommend a book. But I suggested that show to somebody, and next time they came back, so we've already seen the whole thing, my wife and I. So I thought, my God, how'd you do that?
Yeah, exactly.
But they got hooked into it and couldn't get away. So
Might be talking about the killing at your next book meeting.
Yeah, well, and we've already gotten through that because the killing. Actually, right now, I'm kind of. I've been watching Nurse Jackie, which is short and it's some profound problems going on, and it shows the kind of a dark side of the nursing medical world, but it's real stuff, and some of the other stuff I see is just not. I'm not finding it with all the variety that's on Netflix or Amazon. I still don't find anything that really. But once something does get me, it gets me. Right. And I'm a music person. I love music, but I've got a satellite radio and I've got several talk shows, and when I travel across the country.
Yeah.
Satellite radio has to be working, or I'm not going.
Right.
Because otherwise, you're going to hear nothing but commercials.
Oh, right. Just over and over, repetitiveness.
Yeah, if you put commercials next to all the fast food stops off the interstate, it's all junk.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah, right.
And so your trip is just an indulgence into self-destruction,
right.
But if you've got satellite radio and you can take your own food,
yeah,
you can bear the trip.
Yeah, I've learned that lesson the hard way many times. We would take trips to California, and I mean the first one I remember I had a Monster. They call it BFC, big freaking can. So I'm drinking. I mean I don't know how much sugar was in that. That was before I was cognitive of the sugar intake, my bodily sugar intake.
Yeah.
That we're stopping at Taco Bell, so we're dehydrated. We're driving for 17 hours plus, just miserable. And like you said, now if you have a good podcast, that's half the battle right there.
Yeah. It's like you can bear and you can focus.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, it's active stimulation as opposed to passive stimulation, and that's one of the things I talk about in my class. The difference between active and passive stimulation. Active invites thought and invites introspection. Passive, you have to have a higher dose in order for it to keep your attention. And so, instead of one, like you said, you have to have the big Coke.
Yeah.
And then, that it just leaves you hungry for more.
Yeah, right.
And whereas something that's edifying and can teach you something, then that's a whole different way of food for the mind.
Yeah. It makes me think about the first time that I watched Fight Club. And so, but at that point, probably my cinematic intake was, just all over the place.
Yeah.
I was just psyched to see some Transformers beat up each other, And then I watched Fight Club, and literally my mind would not stop churning, and I'm going down thinking about Jack, the narrator, and Tyler Durden, and the things he was saying. And actually, that's actually almost a perfect segue into masculinity and society. That story has so much to talk about.
Oh, it does. That movie's way ahead of its time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of movies, a lot of expression in general, not just movies, books, that are way ahead of their time. And I'm just in the process of finishing Alan Bloom's book, The Closing of the American Mind, which is a book I picked up in the 80s, and I couldn't read it really. I wasn't ready, but I've been reading that book and watching YouTube lectures, and I've had to understand it. But there's a lot about what he said in that book that is just now becoming clear that it's happening to us and about us. And it's opened the door for me to understand a lot of things. I mean, here I am a PhD, and I've taught for many, many years, and I just feel like I'm on the edge of discovering some truths,
Yeah.
And I in a few days I'll be facing some students, and they want a laundry list of what they need to know, and that's it. And there is no laundry list.
Yeah. Right.
That's one of those things that I don't care for, the laundry list mentality.
Yeah,
the
same.
whole, I'll get my degree and the gates of heaven will open up, because that's not going to happen.
Right. I used to be a kind of annoyed with those students. I mean, I was in a biology major, so we had like a lot of, there are some laundry lists in those classes just because it's so broad. And it's like, okay, we got to narrow this down. But sometimes, the professor would go on a tangent of real modern day, like technology that's being used or theories. And then, someone would, is this going to be on the test? And I would, did you not hear how amazing what he's talking about?
Exactly.
This is, oh my God, it's synthetic life,
Yeah, they're wanting to know what's on the test so that they can go, drink beer or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're just not really present. But in a way, we've sold them that idea.
Sure.
To keep the classrooms full so we can turn on the lights. But it's really, we're being unethical by not even being aware of that, or we're trying too hard to sell this thing when we should make it more attractive.
Yeah.
It's turned into a product, and I could probably get in trouble for saying that, but I'm tenured, so maybe.
There you go. Caleb mentioned that, so I was like, yes.
Yeah.
No limits.
Well, I mean, we do need to have a reflexive awareness of who we are.
Yeah.
If there was ever a need for it, it's now. I mean, things aren't looking too good.
Are you familiar with Alan Watts?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I remember listening to his lectures, I was playing, video games, but I just have that kind of playing a few years ago. And one that stuck out to me and has never left is when he's talking about the colleges and the universities and how back in the day, which I don't know how long that would be, but the reward for going to a university or institution of that sort would be the knowledge instead of the credential. Right. So his example was, if you go to college to learn French, well, your reward is you get to talk to French people, you get to eat French food, you get to do all these things. Yeah. And then at some point, the merit started taking over. And rather than learn French, it's about getting the A. It's about getting the higher grade.
Yeah, we definitely have a serious problem with that. I pride myself on the fact that I've nearly flunked out of college twice, and then I made the Dean's Honor Roll later, and it's because of my level of attractiveness to what I was attracted to, rather than, and my parents didn't like it because they'd been told, well, your sons and daughters need to get a college education and all of that, but it's like if I wasn't attracted to it, I would have never made it through.
Yeah. Attracted to the interests that you're studying?
The college, the whole process. I mean, that's one reason I remained in the academy and became a professor, because I love what I do. I get up every day and I get to do something that I love. I get to read books, I get to write, I get to lecture, I get to study, analyze, critique, and I cannot imagine. But now I've had my feet in other worlds. I mean, I've built houses, I've done construction, I've done a lot of things. But even there, you've got the houses that are built today. Some of them are taking the same shortcut that the colleges are taking. Sure. They're not built as well.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I worked for a journeyman carpenter, and the whole idea was that you got you worked with the journeyman. He was the master. He was the person, and he cut a board, and you watched him, and you cut a board, and so you learned this stuff. And then when you can put something together with your own two hands that's solid, it's going to be there after you're gone. That's like this table. Yeah. Exactly. Then there's a reward to that, and you don't need to go get lost in passive stimuli and TV or junk food or whatever in order to feel good. You can just sit and look at what you just created. And so those two come together. I mean, for me, the academic and the artisan have come together, and I'm really fortunate. Yeah. I feel sorry for the people who don't find that. And I don't say that in an aloof way, because it's open to anybody. It's just we're so rushed nowadays. It's like nobody can really contemplate or think about what they're doing. Right. And that's a tragedy.
It really is. Yeah. If you don't take some sort of meditative, reflective, even if it's 5-10 minutes, just to sit down and kind of process what you are doing daily, weekly, monthly. In fact, I just took a 2-day camping trip by myself. My dad has some land in Elk City, Kansas, and I just went out there for 2 days, and I wanted to think about the future, but really I had to take care of the past. So I kind of went through my last 10 years of my life and kind of what happened. I went to California for a while, moved there, worked in the film industry, came back, went to school, started doing biology. It's kind of all over the place. I need to put some meaning to that. So I totally agree with having some sort of reflective practice to go on, whether it's writing or meditation within your mind, or even talking to a mentor and just kind of bouncing ideas, or what do you think about this? Anything to give you some sort of sense of guidance and luminosity. Is that a word?
Yeah, yeah.
So.
It sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I invent words sometimes. I even tell my students, I said, you're going to teach me more than I teach you. Because as I watch you struggle with, or not necessarily struggle, but engage in whatever we're doing here, I said, I learn from you. I said, it's my duty to learn from you because I don't know what it's like to be 21. I'll be 67 in a few days, so I don't know what it's like to have grown up with a cell phone in my hand, or to not use a typewriter, or I don't know what that's like.
Yeah.
And it's probably, some people say it's even changing our brains. And I don't say it's terrible, because like I said, I think there's some great things happening.
Yeah.
So to not be able to have that engaging experience. Another theme that you just reminded me of, you went out and you spent some time and you thought about your past. So many people nowadays say, "Oh, the past is gone; it's water under the bridge," and I don't believe that.
Yeah.
Because the water that's gone under the bridge is connected to the water we're swimming in now.
Absolutely.
So, the past, whether it be the macro past, our government, the consciousness of as a nation, our mythologies, our religion, all that kind of stuff that brought us together as the United States or whatever country, that's a part of you, and if you don't understand how that happened,
right.
if you don't question it,
Right.
then you can't keep it,
right.
Or let it go if necessary.
Sure, right.
So that I've been lately, along with my wandering through Bloom's book, I've been reading a lot of Locke and Hobbes and Rousseau and Nietzsche, and then that's taken me back to Plato and Aquinas and Augustine, and it's just fascinating stuff that I don't think a lot of people do that every day, but I enjoy it, and my professor friends, we have this book club. It's like, it's not required.
Sure.
People say, you have a book? Yeah. Well, why? Well, we just want to.
Yeah, right.
So it's that kind of thing. The students are not reading as much as, and I don't know that that's bad if they're getting the information over YouTube or podcast. I don't want to say it's bad, but I just know that the more you exercise your cognitive capacities, the longer they're going to last.
Absolutely.
And that cognitive window there, the one that when you're young is a prime time. It's like a ripe time to use. Like I've played guitar for many, many years, but I'm a flat picker.
Okay.
I've been going from flat picking to finger style. And I can tell that I wished I would have learned finger picking when the cognitive window was open and fresh, because I'm learning it, but it's like swimming up a waterfall. Whereas or learning a foreign language,
Yeah,
during
that's the
that
big example.
Yeah, that time is very important. It wouldn't stop me from trying to do it, but I'd probably, since I don't care about passing any tests, I'd probably go live with the people and just speak with them experientially rather than worry about passing a test.
Right. And it's ironic that something like that would prevent you from actually learning it. You're so worried and stressed about the test.
Yeah.
And it happened with me in biology too. It's like, this is fascinating, but I got to know the pathway for tomorrow,
Right.
I got the verbatim out of my mind. So
yeah.
So it's something that you mentioned earlier about, engaging with a massive amount of passive entertainment versus, something like working on a project. Part of that would be the suffering that you went through to complete this task.
Suffering is necessary.
Yes.
In my opinion. And there will be plenty of it. You don't have to go out and find it. It's going to happen. But I kind of like Nietzsche's whole look at that, or Nietzsche. Some people call him Nietzsche. Is that when suffering comes, you learn from it. You engage in it. I mean, you don't make it worse. Like I said, there'll be plenty of that without making it worse. But if there's a mountain there and it's hard to climb it and then enjoy the view once you get up there.
Sure.
But that's not always an easy way to live, but that's the way I try to live.
Sure.
You mentioned the psychedelics and that kind of thing. I went through the 60s. I did a lot of experimenting with mind-altering stuff, and I realized that I had enough. I had to stop because it was very destructive for me. It doesn't mean that other people can't handle it, but that's something I can't handle. Like some people can't handle too much sugar or whatever.
Yeah, a glass of wine, people.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but during those times, when the drugs sort of made everything feel easy, but we would record things, and the next day we'd say, "I'm not sure what that is." So
it sounded so good last night.
Yeah, exactly. We were going to be stars and all that. So now there's been some artists that have done some good things, but I was not one of them. I had to go through the suffering of letting go of all that, and so I've been sober and clean for 22 years. It's helped.
Good.
But that, and again, I wouldn't trade that. I don't regret that experience.
Sure.
If I had not have put a handle on it, I probably wouldn't be here, because I did a good job of it when I did it. But I see students grappling with those issues, and I don't say don't. I don't say do. I just say put it in context of who you are.
Yeah. I think one of the big things missing of today, and this once again will kind of revert back to the culture of masculinity and the place of a father, son, brother, like everything that kind of overshadows that term, is that with the psychedelics, and I guess what you were talking about earlier as far as skills and whatnot, is that there aren't any mentors out there, or there's not as many. Right. For instance, what you were saying earlier, and I think Alan Watts actually said this, in Japan, the son would watch the father, who was a carpenter, and he would learn from the father, and that someday he would take the place. And when the institutions came in, then we took the son away. They took the son away, so then the carpentry skill was lost, on the father, and he would go off and he would learn mathematics and physics and English and everything, or literature and whatnot, which we could debate both ways, which is more valuable.
I think I talk about that some in my classes, and I teach gender communication, and I'm even on the women's studies. I'm a male on the women's studies.
That's good.
And I think it's really good. And they're even talking about maybe calling that gender studies, even though some of the women are reluctant to do that. There's a kind of a power thing going on, and it's a very tender area right now. I mean,
it really is.
I'm watching it. I'm trying to stay at a distance. I have some opinions, but strategically, I probably don't blare them out that much because it's so toxic right now to have a point of view. But it is going to get interesting. I can see it's going to get more and more interesting.
How so?
Well, I just think that like recently, I don't know whether you saw the thing about the Google guy that got fired from Google, and he's claiming certain tenets of biological determinism over social constructionism, and those two camps, the war between those, the power struggle between the constructionists and the determinists is not over. And I try to talk about it from a distance just for students to recognize the rhetorical power of one side against another. If there was ever a time when we needed to talk about all the issues transparently, it's now. I don't think we're doing that. I think that I see conflict as an invitation for clarity and not declaring war. But whether it's between men and women, between social constructionists and biological determinists, or between Republicans and Democrats, or between North Korea and Donald Trump, or whatever it may be.
That's scary.
It's real scary that actually taking all the issues and laying them out on the table for examination, free of toxic anger and emotion, we're 1,000 miles away from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are some people that are really, really upset. And you know, I can bring in some of my personal experience here. I'm in a very healthy relationship, and I spent a lifetime in some very unhealthy relationships. And it wasn't until I looked in the mirror and saw, well, how am I contributing to the toxic part of this, that some of that cleared up, and I became eligible to have a relationship with with a woman in my case.
Yeah.
If I was a gay, it would be with a man, whatever your orientation may be. But when you get close with somebody else, that is an invitation for clarity and examining transparently what's going on. And intimacy, when it occurs, is a wonderful thing. But I don't see too much of that going on.
It's scary, right? Because you're vulnerable. You open yourself up and you're vulnerable, and you're like, okay, well, I'd like to be intimate with you, but in order to do that, I have to leave myself open to extreme suffering. Possibility of extreme suffering could be cataclysmic to the point of death, physically and emotionally. Yeah. But I mean, that's the price that you have to pay. And you probably will get hurt, even if they don't even mean to, just because of how fragile we are.
When you're climbing that mountain that Nietzsche talked about, to look at the view, it's like you're going to scrape your knee. You're going to, but once you get there, it's a beautiful sight. I use that metaphor when I direct plays. First of all, during the audition process, I tell everybody, I usually get a pretty good turnout. I'll say, everybody get down here on the stage and listen to me really carefully. Do you realize what you're volunteering for? And they, oh yeah. I said, because you are becoming a servant. And our job is to put the human condition in front of an audience so that they can examine themselves through you.
Wow.
So you've got to become willing to show them their naked side.
Oh, wow.
So that they can see it from the safety of the audience. They can sit in the audience and they're safe there as they view themselves. And I said, you're not special. You're a servant. And I said, I'm a servant.
Yeah.
And I said, if you're not attracted to that idea, you should leave now. If you're attracted to it, then we're going to work our butts off to do that. And I'll be here. I'll be here to sweep the floor, to build the sets, whatever it takes. But I said, you're not a star. Yeah. You're not special. Yeah. You're an artist. You're a priest. You're a priestess. You're a rabbi, whatever. And your job is to put the human condition in front of an audience so that they can see themselves and then go back and think about it in their daily lives. I say, welcome to Western civilization's first church. This is what this is. This is church.
Yeah.
And a lot of times students will say, oh, that's great. And then I've had them come to me 2 or 3 weeks in the rehearsal and say, I don't know if I can do this. I said, well, do what? Well, I'm having to do some really hard work. I said, I know. So that's what you volunteered for.
That is extremely powerful. Yeah. I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah. And sometimes they'll say, well, you're being unfair. You're working me too hard. And I'll say, okay, I'll replace you.
Yeah. No problem.
And then, because if you don't want to do it, I don't want to spend time. I don't take hostages here,
Right.
So, but that's the same thing in a relationship. People get in a relationship. So there's a relationship between the art project and the person that's loving that project. I tell them, I said, if we love this play or if we love this spotlight, it will love us back. If we prostitute it, it will prostitute us back.
Yeah, right.
It's whatever we put into the relationship with this project is what we're going to get out of it. And some of them get it and some of them don't. Some of them don't get it until years later.
Until they reflect on it? Or
Yeah, and then I always I get the benefit of my own toxic ideas as they clear up. In other words, working with so any type of artistic expression, I think, is a form of love, and so I got some pretty wild ideas about that. But it's like if you get into any type of relational activity is going to demand stuff that if you're not willing to give it, well, it won't give it either. You have to give to it in order for it to give back.
Huh. Interesting. So is that the same idea that you would apply to a writer if you in
absolutely.
the writing process?
Yeah. And we talked about suffering. You take somebody like Sartre, or even as he wrote his stuff, powerful stuff. He says, we are who we put into it. It's like, and sometimes you're going to have to suffer. It's my opinion. I don't know this for a fact, but because I've never really met the guy. He's gone now. But Tennessee Williams, when he sat down to write Streetcar Named Desire, I don't think that was a good time for him. I think he had to. I mean, that's not easy stuff to cough up and put down on the page,
right?
Or any playwright that wanders into the dark side of who we are,
right?
And so that we can look at that. I don't think that that's a necessarily fun time for them, and yet it's something that they've been summoned to do.
Whoa, that's a powerful word.
Well, I mean, it's like if they had the idea, where did it come from?
Yeah.
And they chose to put it down. Why? You know? I mean, there's something going on there.
Yeah.
It's a form of church, in my opinion. It's a form of confession.
Huh.
I'm very passionate about artistic expression. That's probably the highest passion I have. But I think everything feeds that. I don't think that we can draw a line between the arts and the sciences, which we do. The university has set up all these little real estate lines in the sand,
Haven't they?
And some of them I admire. Some of them I'm not a very good quantitative scholar. I don't think very well in statistics, but I know they're powerful, and I know they speak, and I know that the more I would know about that, the better. So I don't see any discipline as being something that is better than something else. But I just don't think we should draw rigid lines in this territoriality, so that then it gets down to not just intellectual territoriality, but then the funding and who gets funded and why, and then people get full of resentment.
A hierarchy starts to expand, and who did a really good job of combating this is tech companies. Maybe not now with Google and everything, but like the idea that, and then like one that sticks out is Pixar. Do you know much about like their sort of setting?
I've heard of it. I'm very envious of how much you know about this world, because the technology. I'm just like, when it went from analog to digital, I usually record my own songs. But I bought it. I'm still needing help setting that up. I don't even understand it.
Maybe I can help you.
That would be great. I was thinking, if I do this interview, maybe I can talk him into helping me do that.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
Because I've got some nice equipment. I don't know how to use it, but but I think the equipment, the state of the equipment right now, and what it has to offer, coincides with this. I wouldn't want to call it a back to basics thing, but it's like I've got a couple of CDs I've recorded, and they're marketed under an assumed name. And I'll tell you maybe off the. But it's like every once in a while I'll sell an album I'll sell something in Europe, and they'll say, "Who are you?" And then, but the message I get is, we'd like to just hear you and your guitar, just basic. In other words, the bells and the whistles and all the technology is there, but can you just give us the simple? And there's a kind of a need for that, because so I think we're aware of the gifts that technology brings, but also we're aware of the fog that can come in too. So I think it's all good to use, but and I'm fascinated by it, but I'm an analog man. Like, who was it? Joe Walsh had that song, The Analog Man, and I related that song because, and really, I'm just being honest, I feel very inadequate technologically.
You're not alone. Don't worry.
Well, as a friend of mine told me, who's very well versed in it, he said, I feel we all have because it's not going to stop.
No.
The cat's out of the bag, and so that made me feel.
And you
better.
can never catch up. Like I'm a camera guy, and it's always as soon as I log on to YouTube, it's brand new 6K camera. Like,
Right.
I just got the 4K.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And then it changes like 6K. The files are so big, and now I have to build my own computer to process these things. So it's like, how far is this going to go? It's just going to be a lifetime of always trying to keep up and updating your knowledge on it all the time.
Yeah,
So,
and see, I'm very envious of I could build you a house, but I can't build a computer.
yeah, but you could learn though. You could learn.
Well,
because it's similar.
We have to
Structural
talk,
is
we have
probably
to talk
similar.
about that.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know how to build a computer until I built a computer. And then it
Right.
just made so much more sense to me. Like, oh, this is what that part does. Like
Yeah.
this whole time I've been typing away on Microsoft Word. This is what that's been doing. That's
Right.
amazing. I don't know everything about a computer. It's still elves could be in there banging little hammers around, making my word process come up on the screen. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just they're just metal parts, and then we get this, beautiful graphical user interface. And
Oh,
so-
it's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm amazed, and I've got some amazing equipment at home. And, I'm to the point now, and I'm not too far away from retirement. Is what I'm thinking. Looking forward, maybe I'll sit and do some recording or do what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to get some help.
Yeah, well, you know a guy now.
Yeah, really.
I'll
yeah.
hook you up.
Yeah.
One thing that makes me think about just the analog versus the spectacle is the state of cinema at this moment. When I say cinema, I'll include film and TV and everything that is visual, because there's some like even YouTube channels that are really, really great. But the big debate or the big conversation is always story versus effects, and how Transformers is the only one that always gets picked on. The story isn't really that strong, but the spectacle is magnanimously enormous, where
Right.
you have robots blowing up buildings and punching each other, and it's like, oh, this is great, but the story and the character development isn't there. So if you bleed it down to, there's a great show called Embrace of the Serpent. Have you ever heard of this?
No. Sounds
It's
interesting.
I'll have to get it to you. It's I believe it's a Portuguese film, but it's about like this indigenous shaman when he was a younger guy who came into contact with a sickly Western scientist, basically, and they have to go on this journey through the jungle to find this one psychedelic plant that will heal him. And long, great, epic, just fascinating story. But there's no explosions, there's no gunfights, nothing like that. But the story and the character development and the amount of reflection or thought that you get afterwards about each character, the choices they made, why they do that,
Right.
what would you do, and all that sort of thing is so profound compared to the spectacle. So that's kind of what you were saying as far as
I think,
analog and
I think that we're starving for that, and there's another concept that I use a lot called the wisdom of the organism, in meaning that there's kind of a war between subsistence and meaning, but when we spent more time trying to stay warm or feed ourselves, relationships were not as complex. They may have been brutal,
right.
But now that we've got all this stuff to define ourselves, or you've got all this stimulating effects that you can put onto a story, I think we risk getting lost in the stimulating effects and forgetting about we're still organisms, we're still human.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't know. There's going to be probably some interesting stories told about with the robots that are coming onto the scene.
Right.
And I think in Japan now they have like maids and people that
Sex
look like
robots. Well,
years
gonna do
ago
with that?
I taught for a university in Texas. And this was over 10 years ago. This was in the 90s. One of my students did a report on online sex, where you put on a bodysuit.
Oh,
and then I also had experience teaching in a prison.
Oh, wow.
And I wasn't in the prison, but I was teaching.
Yeah.
And
You got to leave at night.
yeah, exactly. But some of the prisoners told me that virtual sex or was more powerful than real sex, and so you know, the porn addiction out there and that kind of thing, the addiction because the effects are stimulating, they are addictive. So, and whether that's pornography or whether it's blowing up buildings and if you take that back to masculinity or femininity, I think sometimes we're subjected to these profiles of ideals that are unobtainable. We can't look as good as we're not as strong as those men. We're not as pretty as those women, or as strong as some of the women are. They're very we give them muscles and stuff too, and it's like I'm not sure that's real. I'm not saying that we should revert to some type of gender order where men are this and women are that. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm just saying that the ideals, there's still a gender order there, and when men or women are given these profiles, well, this is what you need to look like in order to be lovable, and you can't do it. Just on another level, it's like have you ever seen that couple in Walmart that you see on the commercial? The perfect family. Right. They're all in good shape and they're buying. I don't
Rarely.
I've never seen that in Walmart. I've never seen that.
I've never seen it in Walmart.
Yeah. No. I mean, they're not, there's just tragic profiles of humanity walking around in those stores. And I worked a lot of construction and still do some in the summers. But when I was younger, I would work on the construction crews. And I have a deep respect for carpentry or any type of work like that because I did it as a younger man with a journeyman carpenter, and his houses will be here forever,
That's awesome.
But, I never did really say, well, I've got a terminal degree because I'm working with men that sometimes they don't have 7th or 8th grade education.
Sure.
And before I would never tell them that, but I sweep the floor with them. I nail shingles on, I'll do all that kind of stuff. And then later on in the summer, somebody found out and says, this guy, he's got a degree, and they all crowd around, and want to ask questions and that kind of thing about that. Because in their mind, it's some type of, aloof, untouchable thing. And I think sometimes that's an ideal that's spread too. I mean, a college education is a good thing, but it's not something to wear on your sleeve. It's something to edify yourself, to be educated and not feel better than somebody else. Or that there's a lot of that power.
There is a lot of that, yeah.
Yeah, there's a power, there's an aloofness. And
especially at the Ivy League type levels, they love to remind where they came from, Yeah,
and I think that I teach at a college here in the Midwest. I think you can get the same education if you're just engaged.
Yeah.
But I guess what I was coming around to saying was that when I see some of those people who are buying the drinks full of sugar or the comfort food or the cigarettes or whatever, it just looks like life is just beating the shit out of these people.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's their life.
Yeah.
I grew up upper middle. I never worried about being hungry. None of those kinds of things. And there are people in our country right now that are worried about eating.
Right.
They're worried about how they'll pay their medical bills. And you see them in the big department stores, and they're reaching out for comfort with stuff that's not going to give them the comfort. And it's just a very sad thing to see. And then you see an advertisement of whether it's Walmart or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I don't want to be down on Walmart alone.
Right, like JCPenney.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, you see these ideal characters, and they've bought these goods, and everything will be fine now.
Look how happy they are.
Yeah, and obviously
Drug
things
commercials
are not fine.
Right.
I mean, we have alcoholism is off the charts. The opiate drug thing,
that's insane.
That's off the charts. So we have to ask ourselves, what's going on here? I mean, and I think if we don't enter that, answering those questions in the academy and through the arts and that kind of thing, then, what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely. When you were talking about the ideology, wouldn't you say that's a good thing to have some sort of? I'm thinking of Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces. Like the hero figures of old, where you have like Jesus would be an ideological figure who you could look up to, and probably will never obtain that sort of status, but at least you have something to strive for. Are you saying that ideologies aren't good to have because they are unattainable, or is it?
Well, I think I'll call up Nietzsche here. I think when Nietzsche said God is dead, it was like he was saying we need those things,
right,
to have those things,
right.
But I think when we can see through them, or when we can see that they're leading to imbalances in power. I mean, Stuart Hall was another person you can, he talks a lot about culture and ideology, and some Marxist critics do that as well. Alan Bloom's book goes into the American middle class, and it's a particular type of bourgeoisie that is foreign to Europe, and it has worked for us, we think, but we're still a very young nation, and so we're adolescents.
Oh yeah,
and sometimes I think we beat our chests on the level of adolescent boys on the playground getting ready to fight, and when we're not aware. I mean, we're still very young compared to other cultures. And
200 some years, versus like a Chinese thousands, thousands of years.
And so the our ideological underpinnings were that's the reason why I'm looking at Bloom's book again, and I'm looking at Hobbes and Locke and Rousseau and some of those comments made. And Bloom he compares. Well, he was writing in the 80s, but he compares the status quo, which is still true, with post-World War I Germany, when there was a lot of intellectual stuff going on, a lot of artistic stuff going on,
right.
A lot of political and economic strife, and there's some parallels there that it wouldn't hurt us to look into, because there was one YouTube I saw recently where it was on Nietzsche.
Oh, yeah.
And Hitler went to visit Nietzsche's sister and took a picture, but it went into how the Nazis in the Third Reich took Nietzsche and just bastardized what he had to say. If he would have seen what the Nazis did with the ideology, their ideological interpretation of him, he would have been aghast, because it's not, they didn't use it right at all.
I guess that's the risk you take for being way ahead of your time.
Yeah, well, he was. I'm still grappling with Nietzsche. He's fascinating to me. His death is kind of depressing, and
he suicide.
No, he was mental. Some say due to syphilis, but some others. But he sort of lost his mind. And,
I mean, when you're in those sorts of depths, though, I mean, I guess that's a possibility.
Oh, he was,
Who could you talk to about that sort of stuff?
But I mean, again, the fact that he put that stuff down on paper, I don't think he was having a good time. Just like a lot of artists have put stuff down on paper. And
I'm thinking of, I think his name's Watts. He's a musician. A voice very similar to yours. I want to say it's not Alan, but that's what's coming to my head. Chris Watts. He has a song "Going Out West." I can't remember, but he was talking about one time he was in traffic. It's gonna come. His name will come to me. Yeah. He was in traffic, and an idea for a song came to him. Almost, how they say like the muse will show up, and he just screamed out in his car like, "I'm in traffic. I can't write this down right now. Come back in 30 minutes when I'm at my desk." You know? So it's almost like that, where you said those artists are being summoned, and it's almost like you have to answer the call, or that muse or that energy will just kind of keep going to the next person or whatnot.
Right, and or if it's just what
Tom Waits, that's what it is.
Oh yeah,
sorry,
Waits.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, he's a character.
Yeah.
And some good stuff. I think if the impulse is there and you don't, and it's not an escape impulse, but it's an impulse. This is who you are. Then you better celebrate that. Now that would not include, this is who I am. I'm going to go blow up a building. That's an escape.
Okay. How would you tell? I mean, in that situation, I feel like I could tell not blowing up a building, but for more nuanced.
I believe in an inner light of some sort. I tell people I'm a recovering Baptist, but there's part of my Christian heritage that I will never let go of, even if I wanted to.
Absolutely.
They got to me too.
Same here.
But I do believe that there is an inner light, and we're kind of summoned to. I believe in Maslow's whole self-actualization thing.
Yeah, right.
Hawthorne wrote about it. Hawthorne wrote about the human heart. He said, you step inside and it's a pretty place. You go a little deeper and it's monsters come out of the walls after you and stuff, and then you want to run back out. But you're running from you when you do that. So if you have the courage to go deeper, deeper, and deeper, that this light opens up and you find out who you are.
Whoa.
But to get there, and again, that's what happens when students or anybody put on a work of art that's supposed to be, informative on that level, then you have to show that passage that people need to take so they can see it from the safety of the audience, and then they go home and reflect on it.
Right.
It's like when you move, you've left a play or you've heard a song or a movie, and it's like, wow, you feel redeemed after, or you feel motivated or something, when art doesn't do that, it's junk. It's just, it's.
I was telling my brother the other day that I'm reading the book Musashi. Are you familiar with?
No, I don't think I am.
They deem it as Japan's Gone with the Wind. So it's an enormous novel. It's like over 1,000 pages.
Wow.
About this character Miyamoto Musashi, who actually was a real person, but the book, the novelist, is making up a story about his life. But there was a Musashi swordsman, and he wanted to be the greatest swordsman, and I would imagine most people would deem him with that title. But the book itself, the novel, I was just telling my brother Casey the other day that just reading the book and how he is trying to be disciplined and becoming the best swordsman there ever was, it makes you more disciplined.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm going about like, no, you're not eating the cookies. And Musashi wouldn't eat the cookies. You're going to go out and work out. Or whatever.
It gets you. Yeah, and I think once active stimuli sets in, and you get let's say if a person decides they're going to start running. So they run a quarter, and it's like, oh, shit, this feels good. And then they stick with it, and then think, I'm going to add a quarter. I'll do a mile. And then pretty soon it's like you start feeling good. And so it's a positive addiction.
Yeah.
And you're feeding the organism with the food it needs to get stronger. Whereas the passive stimulation is, I drink a six-pack, and that's all right for a while, but then now I need another six-pack.
Sure.
Or I need a six-pack and a little Coke and a little hash or whatever.
Yeah.
And pretty soon
you've
exhausted and you don't enjoy it.
Right.
And you have to have so much just to maintain. And then you're in trouble.
Yeah, and I would point out with those two examples, like the running and then the alcohol use, like the alcohol feels good at that time.
Right.
You have a beer or two, like you're going to feel great.
Right.
And then afterwards you start to decline into, if you have a lot, you're going to have the hangover or the beer gut, you're not going to feel the greatest.
Right.
But then with the running, you don't feel good at all. You said you ran a quarter and it's like, oh my God, I can't do this. But you're going to feel great afterwards. You're going to be in better health, better shape. You're going to look better. There's a lot of benefits that come afterwards versus the alcohol, which is instant, and then you just decline from there.
Yeah, and then you'd revert to all types of ways to patch yourself up. Whereas the running, you feel good and you sleep good.
Yeah, right.
As long as you don't run right before bed. I've tried that before, and I can't go to sleep.
Wide awake all the
night.
night.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I had a student a few years back. I was recommending that everybody in the class read a book, do an extended book review. In other words, and it was interpersonal, I think. And I said, just bring a book to class, and it's got something. You can draw a link between what we're studying in our textbook and this book, and do an extended book review, and not just what the book's about, but why did this book appear upon the scene when it did? Who was talking about what? What answers? And so this kid came in and he said, Dr. Pogue, I read a whole book. I said, wow, that's good. He said, I'm thinking about reading another whole book. And I said,
That's awesome.
Great.
Yeah. That's great.
So he got triggered in a good, that's the word right now, is trigger. He got triggered into reading another book.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon, that could change his life.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I had professors that saw me. I was just a kid from Southwest Missouri that I wasn't particularly gifted or anything. I just didn't know for sure what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And I had some professors that took the time. And I take that time when I can. It seems like at times it's more challenging nowadays because students there's so much going on.
Yeah.
So much going on that.
Maybe even in the classroom, you might have a phone in your pocket and a laptop here, and then your buddy is right next to you. I mean, they're multitasking
at all times.
Yeah.
And I don't outlaw cell phones in my class. A lot of people do, but I stopped doing that because, sadly, one of the things that we need cell phones for is in case somebody starts shooting, we can call people.
Right.
The other is you can look up words. You can, and so I might ask a student, I said, are you with us back there, And no. I said, well, what are you looking at? Tell us, maybe we need, so I'll kind of go along with it. It's not like a rigid, there for a while it was, but I thought, no, that's not the way it is. I mean, and brains are changing and fewer books are being read.
It's a good technique to have, though, as far as, not making them feel unwelcomed or like called out, instead of just, it's much more gentle of, are you with us? And you're encouraging to come back, and it's okay. I mean, I don't know. I'm probably looking at ESPN or something. I like sports too, or whatever. And he feels welcome to come back instead of chastise.
Right, and not to shame somebody. Shame is a terrible thing to do.
Right.
And I'm not saying I've never done it because sometimes I'll because we're under pressure as professors on an administrative level. The powers that be are wanting this, and this to happen, and they're counting beans, they're counting numbers, they're not counting the level of knowledge that these people have and awareness. They want to know who got the jobs, who graduated,
who's got the most salary coming in,
and so the standards. Well, I'm not sure. There are good things happening. There are good students being produced today. It is happening, and there are students who are very curious. There are students that are on top of it. They do want to know answer. They've got questions, and and then there's other students that are just burdened with the laundry list mentality, and they're a product of our times.
I mean, there's a lot to deal with nowadays, and then when you think about, I'm just thinking about the financial side of a university, like that's one of those myths that you have to overcome,
Yeah. There's nobody even knows what's happening there for sure.
Yeah, that bubble's enormous.
Yeah.
The student debt bubble.
I mean, but here in Kansas, we're better off than some other states.
Big time.
So,
like you said earlier, like Pitt State, you could get a high quality education there, where it's going to get you put you in the potential to get a great career, or start a great career.
Absolutely.
And it's not actually that much money. It's actually decently affordable compared to something like, East Coast type Harvard.
Yeah, and a friend of mine actually is a distant cousin of mine. He got his terminal degree in art at Pitt State, and he's been teaching for Smith College for a long time. So we produce people that some of the more Ivy League type schools pick up. And plus, I think we have a healthy balance of technological education with intellectual education, because, I mean, if I retire and I have any benefits of taking classes, I think I'd like to study with some of the people that do the carpentry and
that would be cool.
Cabinet making. And that. So there's a lot of stuff going on campus that, it's across the board, We're dealing with some funding problems, but we're still alive and kicking. So, and we have the new arts center, which is
fantastic!
Yeah.
Amazing art center. Yeah, and they put some really good theater shows on. I went and listened to a lecture from a National Geographic photographer who was doing things in Mongolia, looking for Genghis Khan's tomb and things like that.
Yeah. No,
his story was fascinating.
There's some excellent stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if that sort of university would continue on, and I think that's probably what a true university is about. They want to do things like that. Yeah, there's the football, and that's fun, and I enjoy going to football games.
Yeah.
But to have that sort of community connection with the art center and like the rec center where, anyone can go in there and work out.
Yeah.
It's mainly for students, but I mean, if the Pittsburgh community wanted to, they could as well. And I know it's nice to have that connection to the community of Pittsburgh because, I mean, Pittsburgh is Pitt State.
Yeah.
Like that is the heart of the town.
It is. Yep. I enjoy being in Pittsburgh because of the pits themselves. I fish a lot.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, do a lot of fishing. But this semester I have a general class coming up, and it's going to be a fun class.
Good.
I got a lot of students very interested in the gender order, and so there's a kind of a shift in the air, and I don't want to talk about it too much too prematurely, but I see a monstrous shift coming.
Okay.
I don't know whether it'll be true. But like I said, it's problematic to even talk about because it's such a sensitive issue. I've learned that I was in I did a conference in it was either San Diego or San Francisco. I was at the National Communication Association's annual conference, and I had done a panel on artistic expression, using artistic expression to access the recondite, the hidden dimensions of masculinity and femininity. In other words, how artistic expression can take us to talk about stuff that normal conversation won't do.
Right.
And I had about 5 different universities involved because I put out a call, and when you do a panel at NCA, there's a respondent, someone that will respond to each presentation, and then there's question and answer period. And a male and the male respondent and a female professor in the audience got into a big fight.
Oh yeah.
And I was really grateful for that fight because I didn't cause it and I wasn't involved.
You weren't part of it.
And afterwards, both parties approached me and said, "You should have shut him up and you should have shut her up."
Yeah.
I didn't say anything, but I told my students, I said, really, that's where we should go, is right into the heart of whatever it was that was bothering him, whatever it was that was bothering her. Let's put that out and look at it in the most transparent, holistic, comprehensive way possible.
Sure.
Give representation to those impulses. But I don't see that happening.
On either side.
No. I see attempts being made,
Right.
but there's a resistance to the transparency for some, and there's power steps in and it blocks the transparency for some reason.
Is it some sort of maybe fear of truth on both sides?
I think it
where,
is.
Oh,
I
I'm
think
going
it
to have
is.
to revert something that I hold
It's
on
a
to.
fear. It's a real estate war. It's a psychic real estate war, or a rhetorical. It's a war.
Yeah. That would be a great name for a punk band, by the way. Psychic real estate war.
Yeah,
Chicago.
but it's because there are a number of people, scholars coming out now talking about the gender order in ways that are irritating other people. And so I think, rather than talk about how irritating it is, let's talk about what is being, why is this irritating? I mean, let's give voice to this. But that's, again, that's a tough place to go to.
Sure.
I've learned that you have to be strategic,
Right.
Because otherwise you'll get branded like this guy did on Google. I mean,
right.
He's gone, man.
Yeah, it's one and done.
And the guys on Fox News, I'm glad they're gone. But we need to look at how did that happen? How is it that they got to be as powerful as they did, and then they're gone? And I mean, all of that stuff. And like I said, it's probably good that they're gone, but.
Right.
To look at those things up close with a magnifying glass is what I like to do. And people say, well, you're so analytical and you're so intense. And I used to say, oh, I'm so sorry. I said, yeah, you're right. Anything else you want to tell me?
Yeah, right.
It's like,
what else you got to say?
Because, I mean, if we don't delve into those issues,
yeah,
they're going to take us hostage.
Right. Right. I agree. I'm thinking about the conversations about like death and afterlife. Nobody likes to talk about. Rarely do people like to talk about those.
Right.
But I'll bring them up at work, and it's like, I'm just trying to take this guy's order, and I'm like, what do you think happens when we die? I don't know, but get this guy a steak.
Yeah.
So, I was going to talk about the gender conflict that's going on there. Oh, I was going to say, to me, I haven't been paying attention to this nearly as long as you have, but it seems like this whole controversy has been initiated by the internet and just the amount.
A lot of it has.
Right.
A lot of it has.
Especially like the queer, and then like the different pronouns that are coming out, and then I associate with being a horseman, or I don't know what people do or what they, you could probably communicate this better than I can.
Well, there's a whole lexicon that and it's interesting if we look at terms. There are the highly.
Want some more coffee?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
There is great coffee though.
Yeah.
There are terms that are problematic, very like the N word or the F word,
right.
and they're just terms. I mean, they're just words. They're signifiers. There's an arbitrary relationship between that word and the thing.
Right.
But because they pack such a punch culturally, those kind of words will always be problematic. But there's other words like queer. There's queer theory, which is a positive thing, and some people queer is not positive, not a thing. There's gay. There's all these. So the lexicon shifts, and then a certain word can be aligned with some type of oppression or so,
Right.
And all that stuff's fascinating because we're grounded in language. So I do a lot of semiotic research where I look at semiotics and the mimetic qualities or the metaphoric qualities or
Associated with what word?
With words, because those words come to, and so we do a deep textual analysis of words. But then if you think about a song, you can take the words and you accentuate the context, the meaning, the flavor, whatever it is, with a minor chord or with a major chord or with a musical instrument. So you've got this configuration that brings this feeling, this ethos into the mix. And you've probably been to a rock concert and a song came, during Vietnam when Neil Young came out of the woods one day when he said, "Listen to this." He did those 10 soldiers and Nixon's coming, and there was the lead guitar, and there were I'm getting it too. There, some students would just been killed.
Yeah,
and that song matched the anger and the. And nowadays they probably would. It's so powerful. That artistic expression is so powerful, and so if you have, there's that channel of communication or on stage, and it's an intimate theater, and you've got a character standing there uttering words within the context of a conversation, and their costume and the lights. It's all, powerful stuff. So again, I always go back to the need for artistic expression, and it has a way to launch us past our defense mechanisms, past our resistances, past the barriers that we put up to where, holy shit, that's what that is, And some people will be outraged by a song. Well, if we're outraged by a song, it's not a hurricane, it's not a fire, it's just words and music. We're outraged. What is it that's outraged us? In other words, let's go there and examine.
See what the truth is.
Yeah, or the impulse. The truth's so loaded. What? Okay, you're upset. I can see you're upset, or I can see. Let's talk about that.
Right.
And let's work through it. I go back to an intimate relationship. I've been with the same partner now for over 6 years. which is a record for me. Because, and, it's ironic that I teach gender communication and relationships because my track record is pretty bad.
Yeah.
But still, I learned through all those experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that has kept us together is that when things get problematic, we don't run. We go into the heart of that matter and talk about that stuff. And every time I say this to somebody, I say, well, it may not work next time. Maybe we'll run like hell. But so far, we've stuck with it. And when we get to the other side of whatever was bothering us, we're stronger, just in the same way that runner, once he gets the mile done, he's stronger.
Right.
But if you run away, then what are you going to do? Replace that person with another person, or with a drug, or with food, or go buy a new car?
Sure.
Or, but if you've got a relationship that's solid, then you've got something that's precious, man. And that person, sees you get bruised, they don't run. They reach their hand down.
Absolutely.
That kind of thing. And so. But intimacy's scary stuff.
It is. It really is. It to me, described my experience on the psychedelic substances, because when I would partake in these things, sometimes it was, this euphoric, this is amazing, it's cool to be alive or whatever. But a lot of times it was opening the door to just the abyss of who I was.
Exactly.
And instead of, running away and going like, I don't know who that was, that wasn't me, It's like, okay, I have to look at it, I have to accept it, and then only then it's like, now I can go past it, or I can at least integrate it. I think that's Nietzsche who talked about the shadow self, incorporating the shadow self into, and how powerful it is in your development as a human, as a man.
And he also talked about the fact that if you do that, and the herd does not do that, and they look over at you and realize you did the work that I should have been doing on myself, I resent you, then I'm going to blame you for the work I haven't done on myself.
Oh, man.
And so Nietzsche's writing addresses that type of resentment. There's a resentment of the person that's a part of the herd that follows the wider road and all that kind of stuff, and they see another person that's doing the work.
Guilty.
And they say, oh, you've done the work?
Yeah.
Huh. We don't want you around. And some people would say, we're going to put you on a cross. We'll fix you. We'll fix your ass. Put you on a cross. Because, that's the...
Yeah.
And some interpretations of the whole crucifixion are about that, because Christ said, you're all killing each other. You all resent each other. It says, kill me. And then you don't have to, that's an idea.
Yeah.
It's just an idea.
But, powerful.
And when Pilate looks at Christ and says, oh, you say you're the Son of God? Prove it. Well, what does Christ do? Nothing. But just look at him.
Yeah.
And Pilate goes, oh, shit. I don't want anything to do with this guy. This guy's powerful.
Yeah, exactly.
So this guy's power. In his impotence, he was powerful. In other words, he didn't perform for his worth.
Right.
So in a way, that's the message is we're already okay if we can get to that part of us that's okay, which is way down deep where that light is, But civilization and its discontent. Think about the title itself. Civilization teaches us to be discontent with who we are because it sets up these ideals that we can't follow. We can't do that.
Bingo.
So then we're angry. So we're going to go buy goods to make ourselves feel better.
Right.
And here's somebody over here, some clown over here that just told himself the truth.
Yeah.
And something I should be doing. Let's kill that.
Yeah.
Go kill that asshole.
Yeah.
Let me,
Make me feel better.
It made me feel better about myself, and but on the drug thing, that's what happened to me. I had some bad trips because it opened the door to too much. And then and there were a few people that said, don't take LSD because you'll never come back.
That's
but
probably a possibility.
You don't have to have those. I don't think.
No,
I mean, for some people, it's a launch pad. But, and I couldn't handle them.
Sure.
Prolonged.
Right.
But I don't say. Each person, it's like Sartre said, you decide who you are.
Yeah.
don't rely on somebody else to tell you who you are. But that being said, I'm not an atheist. I think there is some type of energy, force, God, higher power, whatever you want to call it, that is summoning us all home, or we're already there. We just don't know it. Type thing. That's a little bit of New Age thrown in there. I'll throw some Course in Miracles stuff on top of all that.
Let's do it.
But
very eclectic view.
Well, it's
the Pogue view.
It's okay, to tell my students, indulge.
Right.
Feel what you feel. And if you put your hand on the hot stove and it burns, scream.
Take
it
your
burns.
hand off. Yeah, right.
Don't stand there and smile and say I'm okay when you're not okay.
Right.
It's like
right. Yeah. I think we're discouraged from doing that nowadays. I think you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
How many people are alcoholics, the opioid addiction, all that sort of thing. And it's never the system. It's you. It's the person. It's like, you're depressed or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, because this job sucks and I don't have any fulfillment. My relationships are all in crumbles. I don't have any sort of direction in my life. That's the underlying. If you could get to that part and deal with those issues, you probably wouldn't have to have opioids at night. You'd be able to sleep, and go from there. So
it's the setting up of these ideals that are unobtainable, unobtainable ideals.
I remember I have a really good friend and mentor named Adam Ayers, and he reminds me a lot of you. He's a pastor. Has a PhD in biblical hermeneutics.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so his whole thing is just going into Scripture and interpreting it. He can speak, I don't know, I think he can speak Greek. I know he can read and write Greek.
Yeah.
And maybe Hebrew too. So he can go back to the original texts and kind of formulate, like, they were saying this word into, they translated it a little differently. It's not exactly what he was referring to at this point. In fact, we did a thing that's still on YouTube called Bible Walkthrough, and people would send in like lines of scripture and they would decode it for us. And I mean, there was some awesome ones. Like, as far as, there's one where Jesus uses the word bitch, like calls a girl a bitch.
Yeah.
The same word with the same sort of force in one of these stories, and the way that she reacts. It's the one where let the dogs feed under the table or something. I don't quite remember it, but I'm sitting there running the cameras, thinking, what is going on?
Yeah.
It's fascinating. But I'm a writer. I like to think of myself as a writer. So I would talk to him about writing, characters, story, and all these things. And we were talking about the Hobbit at one point, and the different characters in the Hobbit. And he asked me like what my favorite character was, and I said, I love Thorin. He's strong, he's a leader, he's brave, And he's like, you like him for all those reasons because you aren't that. We're all Bilbo.
Yeah.
Small, hairy feet, fat, scared to death, have no good skills. And I mean, I have thought about that so many times, like, that is true. I disregarded who I really was because I had this ideal of like, if I'm in the story, that's who I am, It's like, that's because you don't have that sort of stuff.
Well, I think that something that follows that is, by the way, I need to look. I just have to pick up my
absolutely.
My mate at 4:30, so we got plenty of time.
Okay, cool.
I probably should leave just to get to Pittsburgh by.
Takes about 30 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Give you some time. You want to wrap up at 4?
Yeah, that sounds
cool.
good. Yeah.
Cool. I'll try to keep track.
But what I was going to say was, it's not always true, but I think sometimes it's true that if somebody is irritated with you or doesn't like you, they may be attracted to you. I had I've had this experience a few times, and where the person did admit it, But I mean, in grad school, I was doing a seminar class, and 7 or 8 people, and there was a person in there that I would say up and she'd say down. I'd say it was just everything I said. And I ended up being cast in Sam Shepard's True West. We just lost Shepard, by the way.
What?
Yeah, Sam Shepard died.
I had no idea.
Yeah, he just died.
True West is one of the best ever.
Yeah. Well, I played Lee in True West, and so this particular person became the stage manager, and we got to know each other.
Okay.
And she was married to a minister, and I really give the minister credit here because he came to me and he said, my wife is fascinated by you. Take her out to dinner, So
whoa,
I took her out to. I mean, it
That's
was
awesome,
like so. But I mean, it was what it pointed out, and a lot of people would have trouble with me saying this, but it pointed out that there was some type of attraction there. And you know, I was single, I was a musician, I was an actor, I was kind of wild at the time. And it was like, she was, in Kay, she was a minister's wife. She was like, it was almost like she was paralyzed, you know, and you know, nothing inappropriate happened, but it was like, he just said, you know, and I thought that was a loving thing for him to do.
Absolutely. Right.
You know, I'm not sure I would have done that.
Yeah,
you know, but,
powerful move right there.
Yeah, so, I mean, but I think sometimes when somebody disagrees, it's like because they're curious, they're at least curious, or there's something about you that they could be envy or attract. And that goes along with Nietzsche's whole thing of where, and I should say Nietzsche. But I'm, like I said, I'm a hillbilly white trash with an education. But where there's the mentality of the herd, which is a safe place to be. And Plato talked about this as well in the Phaedrus. He talked about it with the dialogue where the evil, noble, and neuter lover, you know, the noble lover will tell the truth regardless of what happens, regardless of the cost. The evil lover exploits the truth, is jealous of the truth, uses the truth for unethical gain, and the neuter lover takes the pathway of least resistance. So, in other words, whoever's winning the argument, that's who I'm going to be with, right?
Right.
And so
sounds very biological.
Yeah, well,
evolutionarily speaking.
Yeah, Nietzsche. Well, yeah. I mean, you're going to swim together, and the fish are going to swim together, but then so they don't get eaten.
Yeah.
But when that fish that swims off by themselves and they don't get eaten, somebody in the herd is angry at them because
they've broken the rules.
It means that they could do that too, but they don't have the guts or the balls to do it. So they're going to be angry at that person and try to pull them down, or small group theory tells us
speak ill of them, you know, just
I mean,
like, oh well, it's his dad's money, that's why he's so successful.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and the small group theory tells us this. You know, there's always a leader, but there's always somebody in the group that is the crucible, someone that must die for the sins of the group. You know, right? And that person might be somebody that's telling the truth. If we've got a bad leader, if we have a good leader, then the good leader is going to lead with littlest power. Has an ethos about them that is just natural, and people, you know. Good leaders are I think the military generals that are on the front line with their, you know, or like when I direct a show, I'm sweeping the floor at night.
Yeah,
I'm not above these people.
Right.
And so I think it's a life of service. I think is important.
Yeah.
You know, and as a professor, that's my duty.
Yeah.
And when it becomes drudgery, it's time to quit.
Yeah.
It's time to get out of the game. You know? And, it's just now getting interesting, and
that's awesome.
I'm not too far away from probably retirement. You know?
It's cool that you keep your mind open in that sense. You know, where I think a lot of days, and I probably struggle with this as far as getting older, you kind of want to hold on to the past. Like you want to, I still want to be in my 20s. I don't want to be 30, you know, or whatever. Instead of going forward and going like 20s were awesome, 30s are going to be sweet. You know, there's things in my 30s that I had no idea were ever going to be possible, and then it just keeps kind of going. So I think that good momentum, especially what you're carrying with you, is I'm 60, whatever, you know, I'm still learning. This is awesome. I'm learning even more than I did when I was a younger guy, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I've got more tools, and that's the reason why I'm sure I give the students some stuff, but they give me so much because I think it's so fascinating to watch them. And ask them questions like, you know, because some of them don't know what whiteout is, or they don't know what a typewriter. They don't know these things, and
floppy disks,
or 8-track tape players or stuff like that, you know, or even cassette, you know.
Right.
And so it's interesting to ask them, what would it be like? You know, we didn't have those tools, you know.
Right.
I don't believe that any particular era or epoch has it made. Right. I think we're all just, you know, in other words, I don't ever give them this talk like, well, when I was a boy,
Right.
I had to walk through 10 miles
Right.
of snow just to buy my marijuana. It's like,
Right.
I don't do
Dedicated.
that. Yeah, that's right.
You guys
I
have
don't.
it easy.
I don't do that.
You
crap
got
to
them
the-
synthesized vape pens.
Yeah, it's like, I remember in college when I was still getting high and stuff, they had all these fancy bongs and all this kind of stuff. Just give me the joint, for
right. The classic.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think it's right to. I guess the only time that I would ever get close to that type of talk would be when the budget robs us of our abilities. I mean, when the money thing, when we follow the money, that's to me that's tragic, and yet. We have to have it. We're part of a capitalistic system. But when the money determines our agenda as much as it is now, it's a sad thought.
Right. It makes me think of budget cuts and like what gets cut first. It's always arts, the music,
Always.
every time.
Yeah, every time.
They'll just
Every
cut
time.
it. And in fact, I don't want to talk too much shit, but like Riverton, I went to Riverton and they just put up, I don't know if it's multi-million, but multi-$1,000 brand new basketball gym.
Right.
Like, and that's cool, and I'm psyched for them and everything. But it's like, why didn't you guys invest in maybe new instruments or maybe new computers for coding classes?
Or
like,
new,
why is
new theater lights, or
new theater lights, or a
yeah.
bigger theater? Like I always curious about that, and I guess it comes down to money.
Yep.
So now this basketball stadium, they can do state playoffs and whatnot. So then you have all these schools from Kansas coming to one place, coming to Riverton, where that's going to generate a ton of money for a concession, for players, all
when
that kind of
PSU fills that stadium.
stuff. Oh, yeah.
My God, that's a lot of money.
Oh, ton. Parking is insane.
And
concessions.
When alumni, when they donate money, they tell a school what they want it used for. So
I'm thinking of the Plaster Center.
I mean, it's like
which is awesome, but I mean,
Dr. Scott and I had a conversation. He said, well, we don't always get to choose where that money goes for.
Right.
Somebody, if they're going to donate it, they're going to tell us how to use it. So
right, exactly.
But
it's just, I guess, it's just how you play the game, right? I mean,
well, but I do think there's an ethical responsibility here. I directed a show last year called Other Desert Cities. It was a family drama, and it was really intense drama. In fact, I had one of my friends. He's a foreign language professor. He's retired now, but he almost left at intermission, and he said, "I almost left." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "It's too real. It's too real."
Whoa.
So and I didn't fill the theater. Now, in my opinion, because we live in a day and age where there's generation gap that's serious, there's drug abuse, there's family. That's where we should have been. Now, a Broadway show comes in, they're going to fill the thing.
Yeah,
But when it comes to a didactic piece that looks at the darker sides, that's frustrating to me. And I think we could do more, maybe advertisements, more little snippets in the, here's what's going on, and there would be people to show up.
Yeah. Right. Do a little bit marketing a little bit better is what you're saying?
And we need to market the active stimulating stuff as well as the fun stuff.
Right. And make it cool, too. For instance, like, I don't want to pick on sports too much, but, like, just sports are very cool, very hip. If you're a sports, you're probably pretty popular. And this is kind of turning towards the advantage of, intellectuals, and I don't want to call them nerds and stuff, but, like, people who are technologically capable. That's kind of being cool. That's kind of made to be cool now. So you can be a coder, you can be a writer and stuff, and it's like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think
it's kind of coming around.
That could be put in there.
Yeah.
And we did the show before that I directed was an Ibsen piece, and I'm trying to think the name of it, but we used it as a way to talk about the contamination of Grand Lake with the blue algae and the chicken industry, and how those two industries, the tourist industry of Grand Lake and the chicken industry and the runoffs from the fields were causing problems. And, because I can't even think of the name of the play. Name some Ibsen plays.
I wouldn't. I'm here.
Go to Ibsen. Ibsen plays.
Is that IB?
IBSEN. Because this play and I'm having a brain fart.
Doll's House, Peter, Enemy of the People.
Enemy of the People, that's
There
what it
you
was.
go.
It was Enemy of the People. Was a story of a tourist town in Norway in the 1800s that sold the hot springs,
Mm-hmm.
but they were contaminated. So do we tell the tourists that, the stuff that's bringing, it'd be almost like if we had a football game and the seats were contaminated. Do we tell the people? And
lose out
in
on
fact,
all that cash.
The movie Jaws was inspired by the Enemy of the People, because here we have this white shark, all the people going to the beach, and
It's prime
we're not
time,
gonna,
summertime.
Yeah, we're not going to tell them about it.
Okay.
And so we did use that at PSU, as we had some lecturers come in and talk about the blue-green algae, and
cyanobacteria type.
yeah,
thing.
all that kind of thing. And so there's got one industry that's clashing with another, and money's the heart of the problem. This other play was a similar type of family drama, and the family communication class came, and then I had psychology. But I would like to see the dean there, the president there. I'd like to see it. And I didn't see that. And that might get me in trouble too, but I wish they should have been there.
For sure.
Now, they've got a lot of things they got to go to. And I think that what motivates people to attend is the dollar.
Yeah.
The dollar sign.
Right. Firstly, right.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to get mature enough where that doesn't bother me anymore. But
it's always something to work on too, like
Oh,
if
yeah.
you keep putting shows on, I mean, that surely at some point those people would show up.
Well, they've got their hands full right now with budget cuts and
Maybe cast them.
Yeah, or write a script about them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. They're definitely busy folk.
Yeah, I mean, we're all busy. And it's going to happen here in a couple of weeks. We're going to start
full blast.
Meetings start next Tuesday.
Yeah,
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we get ready for it. And we've got more online classes.
Yep.
And I'm going to be teaching classes online before it's over. So are those bad? Some people say those are bad. I'm not going to say they're bad at all. They can work. The ideal, I think, is a hybrid. Every once in a while, we need face-to-face, like you and I are doing right now. That's the reason why I came down. I would rather do that than do the Skype thing, But
I was just trying to save you a trip, but when you said you'd come down, I was thrilled.
Wow,
that's awesome.
I like driving around down here anyway. Some of these days I want to investigate some of the fishing water down here below the dam and stuff. Have you fished this water?
A little bit, yeah. Rivertown, it's got some good fishing parts in it. Chautauqua, that's got some good. Have you ever been there?
Chautauqua, catfish capital of the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some good stuff down there. Yeah, my dad has a bunch of farmland, so I could hook you up there. We have 1, 2, 3, at least 4 big ponds that we could always throw our poles into.
Well, that'd be great.
A bunch of bass and stuff.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd go for that. So yeah. So.
That's cool. So I know we're getting crunched on time. I don't want to hold you too long, but I guess just some things for the listeners. If you're really, really into philosophy, and I think most of my listeners and my friends who listen are along that same parallel, what sort of content would you push them towards? Would you recommend just starting out with some Nietzsche, or would you read maybe some essays?
The philosophy that I expose myself to comes from everything. The idea that everything is connected, right? And my period of American literature was naturalism. In other words, that was what followed. Well, you have your golden age of Greece and your antiquity and that kind of thing, and then you have your dark ages, the Middle Ages, and where the church was dominant, and then you have the Enlightenment and romantic literature, transcendentalism, and then you've got your scientific enlightened literature where science was going to save us all, and then there's naturalism.
Is that where we are now?
Well, some people would say postmodern, and but I think that the naturalists had things to say because it was when the Industrial Revolution occurred, and subsistence and meaning sort of were toppled over because all of a sudden we had machines that were, and we're sort of doing that now. If you go to the store now, you
self-checkout.
Yeah, self-checkout. And I was listening to a report on my satellite radio coming in here about how some dairy farms are now using more mechanistic ways of milking. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's replacing people.
Yeah.
And we had spare time, and science was going to save us. But at that same time, the turn of the century, there was a kind of a despair, and there was the shift from the agrarian way of life to the urban way of life. A lot of people left the farms and went to the city, and they ended up working on assembly lines and child labor laws. It was dangerous, and there was slums, and so there was a kind of a despair.
Right.
So naturalism was the literature of despair, and so during that time, that's when Nietzsche wrote, and later Sartre was post-World War II. And so, I don't know, I kind of put it together to understand Nietzsche. I would have to read the existentialists, read Kierkegaard, and juxtapose those two together, because Kierkegaard was not atheistic, whereas Nietzsche was, and I'm not atheistic. You know, I still believe in that. I studied the Romantics, Hawthorne, Emerson, Thoreau, that kind of thing. And so all of my philosophy, I took a philosophy course as an undergraduate years ago, but most of the philosophy that I study is the result of a footnote or something in a book. And I think, well, I'm going to go look at that. So maybe I'll look at a podcast or YouTube or something, and then the next one is even more stuff, Like I always knew that Hobbes and Locke had an enormous influence on the founding fathers of the United States. And so when I started reading Alan Bloom's Closing of the American Mind, he goes into this whole chapter of a German connection between German philosophy and United States consciousness. And then the next chapter, he gets into Hobbes and Locke and Rousseau and Nietzsche. And so that's my vehicle into, and then a lot of other stuff that I'm very much into psychoanalysis. And so I've read almost everything Erich Fromm ever wrote. Now, his book, The Art of Loving, was real popular during the 60s, but we sort of misinterpreted that. He was not suggesting let's all go to Woodstock and ball everybody in sight. That's not what he was saying. And he was like, love and technique and all that kind of stuff. But he's got another book called The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness. And so in order to read Fromm, then I had to read Freud. And then I read Maslow, and I read Carl Rogers and Jung and
Dostoevsky.
That's on my list.
Okay,
that's on my list. And The Idiot. I want to read The Idiot.
Is that Camus? Or is that
Camus is another one that's on my list.
Okay.
And I just recently looked into Sartre. Now, I just looked into commentaries on Sartre. I've not read Sartre. To read Sartre, actual Sartre, that's a challenge.
Really?
Yeah. Foucault is another person that I've read, although lately I'm starting to kind of question some of that, which would disappoint some of my feminist friends, I think. But I'm starting to question Foucault. And so my exposure to philosophy is, if there's in the book club, this book club we have wonderful discussions. And so it's everything's kind of connected. But that period of naturalism in American literature, the Industrial Revolution, the closing of the frontier, the mechanistic way of life, being on an assembly line and saying, well, is this all there is type thing. I studied Jack London as my getting my master's degree.
Really?
And there's a sociological interpretation of The Call of the Wild. The Call of the Wild is like an adventure story for boys, but on another level, it's a sociological treatise. And he, that book was translated by the Russians and the Nazis to use in the wrong sort of way.
Wow, they're so good at that.
The Superman idea, Nietzsche's Superman idea. London didn't understand what Nietzsche was talking about either, but the hero of that book is a dog.
Right.
And you can say things about a dog that you can't say about humans, but that dog's story was the story of the lost person trying to climb up the social Darwinistic ladder of the social era. When and London himself was an illegitimate child, and he was worried about his lineage. Was he white Anglo-Saxon? Was he? All that stuff's there.
Yeah.
But I studied London. I studied Crane, which came before London. The Red Badge of Courage, but then Maggie, A Girl of the Streets, and so in order to understand that, like Crane's poem, "A man said to the universe, 'Sir, I exist. However,' replied the universe, 'the fact has not derived in me any sense of obligation.'" So in other words, there was just like this feeling of we're just in the abyss. And Crane was the descendant of preachers, and so I thought it was and he married a prostitute, and he died at a very young age. So all that kind of stuff, I was drawn to that kind of stuff, and so again, to understand those writers, I had to go into the philosophy of Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. And it's all connected. We'd need another session to talk about all that. But,
I hope we do.
Yeah, but what's drawn me to Nietzsche and Locke and Hobbes and Rousseau right now is as I'm taking a journey through Alan Bloom's book.
Yeah.
Do you know the book?
No, you've mentioned it several times, and best believe Amazon's getting a purchase after this podcast.
Yeah, The Closing of the American Mind. It came out in the 80s, but there's a lot of podcasts and YouTubes and
talk about it.
Yeah, a lot of talk about it. Some of the stuff that he was addressing is now coming into view, and it's making sense. And he was also a very passionate professor.
Okay.
And one of the things, if the student, not all students like my classes, and the complaint is that I'm all over the place, which this interview probably shows that, but
that's all right.
And that, that I say the same things in all my classes, and that everything's connected. And that's true.
Yeah.
And I tell them that.
Yeah.
In the beginning of the semester, I'll say, here's just the same thing with the auditions. Here's what you're getting involved in. I don't think in terms of a laundry list. And I said, if that's what you want, then my feelings won't be hurt. There's other people you can take, and you should take them.
Right.
But if you have to take me, we'll just have to get through it somehow.
I'm just warning you.
I try to respect that.
I see it as like a connect the dots. As you start to do the connect dots, it doesn't look like anything. So maybe your lectures, they're all over the place. We're going over here, we're connecting here. But at some point, there's going to be a connection from one dot to the other. And then it's like, it's a cat or whatever sort of connect the dots.
The communication discipline, Robert Craig came out with an article, I'm not sure when it was, 70s or 80s maybe. There's 7 traditions that kind of distinguish communication as a field. And so those 7 traditions are repeated in all my classes because there's the rhetorical, the cybernetic, the semiotic, the psychoanalytic, the critical, social, psychological, and social cultural. Those are all traditions, and they overlap into a kind of a territory of epistemology. But another idea that I talk about a lot is that the map is not the territory, but if there was no map, there'd be no territory. So in other words, we're grounded in language. So we have to use these terms to sort of give us some semblance of where we are. And so phenomenology is, that's the look at how do we process information. We've got this brain that all this information and stimuli speeding into our heads. Where do we put it? And we can't possibly put it all in there, so we'll take this out or this out, and we'll focus. What makes us decide that this was needed to be put out and this put in?
Right. Yeah.
So phenomenology kind of looks into that. Semiotics looks into once we put it in there, what do we call it?
Yeah,
we'll call it a name,
yeah.
and then the sociocultural tradition is more of a social constructionist type thing, whereas the socio-psychological is more deterministic. Biology is destiny, whereas the other is, we came up with this culturally. So it's all, but those 7 traditions repeat themselves in all my classes, even some of the 500 level classes, so that students start to get a semblance of, what's going on when we talk about the discipline of communication, because it is a discipline. It's a relatively new discipline. Some people say it's the illegitimate child of English departments or whatever, but is funding. Some people would say if we have to cut departments, that communication would be one of the first to go. But most of us in communication say we talk about everything,
right?
So we do talk about everything,
in like a meta sort of way.
Yeah. So
those seven, what'd you call them?
7 traditions that compose the communication discipline as a field.
It would be more of analogous to maybe like a lens to like view certain things.
Yeah, it maps the territory, and the cybernetic tradition, for instance, came out of World War II, and it was a study of anti-aircraft guns and how they would have to systemically fix them so that if a plane's going, they fire ahead of the plane, so it's a systemic look at things. That was the origin of it. But the cybernetic tradition can be, we look at the family as a system. It's not just people, it's a system. And there's a static balance. Or we look at an engine as a system. So if one piston's not working, the whole thing is, so the cybernetic is a systemic look at things. Whereas rhetorical is all about persuasion. How do I persuade you to believe this or that? And
that could go forever.
Oh yeah, well, so that goes back to the Greeks and Aristotle and Plato, and to some extent the theater was involved. I mean, the Greeks had festivals every year, and as a guy named William Packard, he was a playwright and a playwright teacher. He said that the Greeks would actually take their prisoners out of prison and set them on the front row to watch the tragedies, so that they would learn something about their condition.
Oh, wow.
And the tragedies were dark.
Yeah.
I mean, Medea eats her children, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then there was also a comedy. And that Nietzsche comes into appreciation of that too. The Birth of Tragedy, he talks about the Dionysian versus the Apollonian. The Apollonian god of order and structure and civilization, and the Dionysian is the
chaos,
the big penis in the spring that's trying to find a way to plant sperm or seeds, the rite of spring and drunkenness and sexuality and that kind of thing.
Wow.
So those two clash.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, we need another time to talk.
You need to get going. This stuff is fascinating.
Yeah.
So,
well, this has been fun.
Yeah.
I love this coffee. By the way.
Absolutely. And you know where to get it. You just come back down. We'll do another episode.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you coming on. This was fascinating.
Well, I would like for you to consider visiting my home and
absolutely
helping me with.
Well, you called me earlier, so we swapped numbers. Just let me know. I'm up in Pitt every once in a while. I'll be more than happy to help. Try to set some things up for you and give you a tutorial on how things run. Yeah,
so. I've got the equipment. I just don't know how to turn it. I can turn it on, and that's about it.
Yeah, I got some good musician friends too that I might bring along so they could look over it.
That would be great.
That
would be absolutely.
Okay, because they would be more inapt to that. I'm pretty decent with voices, but as far as trying to catch the pitch and tone of an instrument, it's a little bit different. But
I would love it.
Good.
I would love it because and I'll get you a CD.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Pogue. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been awesome.
Thank you.
I hope everyone else enjoyed this episode number 30 as much as I did. I tried to keep up the best I could, but you're a deep man, deep thoughts.
Just a simple guy from Southwest Missouri, really.
And humble as well. But I'm sure you'll be back on someday because there's a lot we didn't cover that I have on this paper, and there's a lot of questions that I have blasting through my mind. I'm going to have to do some reading of Nietzsche and whatnot so I can discuss these things. And I was going to ask, do you have to be a professor to be part of that book club, or can...
No, I can ask if you would like to join, you know.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, we meet once a week.
Nice.
Yeah.
I feel like I could probably do that.
And in fact, the next book we're going to do is Closing in the American Mind. So,
oh, well, I could get a head start on it.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, everyone, thank you for listening today. We will be back next week. I don't have anybody yet, but in talks with a few people. I know the comic book artist from California said he's in, and then also the Mother's Brewery, the guy that made Mother's Brewery, I forget his name, but he's said he would come on. So I got some good people coming on. But if there's someone that you want to hear come on the podcast, please shoot me a message on Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff, and I'll do my best to get them on. So everybody, thanks for tuning in. Have a great week. Peace.
SciFi wins.